very good afternoon to all the students of class 12. As I had told you in my last video that I would upload another video for the essay type questions, the long answers. Alright, my first question is, in which part of the play does Mr. Lamb display signs of loneliness and disappointment? What are the ways in which Mr. Lamb tries to overcome these feelings? Now, as we come to know in the chapter, Mr. Lamb lives all by himself in a huge house and a large garden. And from the story unfolding, we come to know that he has no family and friends. However, he says that a lot of neighborhood children come to his garden, to steal apples and pears. Some of them talk to him, and many of them jokingly call him Lamey Lamb. But he is large-hearted enough to accept it, and he ignores all their adverse and mocking comments. Now, but still, he calls all these children his friends, and he says he keeps his doors and windows and the gate to the garden open for anyone to come in, which, as I had told you in the last video, is a sign that he welcomes everybody. And he loves to see all these children, playing in his garden and eating the fruit and enjoying the jelly and the toffee that he prepares. In fact, we come to know that he loves everything and everybody created by God. He believes that everything belongs to him, that belongs to him actually also belongs to others. But somewhere deep inside his heart, there is a terrible loneliness, and he longs for some permanent company. And this part is, we come to know, or we discover this aspect of Mr. Lamb's life towards the end of the chapter, where there is a little soliloquy, soliloquy. Soliloquy is a speech which one makes to oneself, not to anybody else, but when one makes a speech to oneself. And at that time, when Derek wanted to go back to his mother, and he promises to come back, then Mr. Lamb doesn't say anything in reply, and he simply walks off saying that he wants to tend to the bees. And then Mr. Lamb mutters to himself, we all know, I'll come back. They never do, though not them. Never do come back. Now these words poignantly means painfully, P-O-I-G-N-A-N-T-L-Y, painfully reveal or poignantly reveal the terrible loneliness that Mr. Lamb suffers from. And it is very sad to see that a person who does return to keep his promise, that is Derek, does come back, but he arrives a little too late when Mr. Lamb has already passed away into the next world. He's risen above all the loneliness, and at that particular phase of time, he actually needs no company. So we do come to know about his loneliness and disappointment from the speech that he makes to himself. Okay. Question number 2. The actual pain or inconvenience caused by a physical impairment is often much less than the sense of alienation felt by the person with disabilities. What is the kind of behavior that the person expects from others? Now, in this lesson, we come to know that both Mr. Lamb and Derek, they suffer from a physical impairment. Mr. Lamb has an artificial leg made of tin, and Derek has a severely burnt face. And both the experiences, of course, must have been very painful for the sufferers. Okay. However, we see that Derek suffers not just on account of the pain or inconvenience caused by the physical impairment, that is the burning of the face, but also from an acutely low self-regard, self-rejection, and his notion of how much people hate him for being ugly. So the pain of the suffering, the acid pain and everything, that is of course there. But more than that, he suffers on account of his low self-regard, his self-rejection, and how people pass comments, and how people hate him for being so ugly. His loneliness and suffering are aggravated, increased by his feeling that nobody loves him and wants him. So basically, it's human nature to be loved and to be liked by everyone. And he suffers pangs of alienation within his family too. Like they've said that his mother kissed him, but she only kissed him on the side of the face that was okay, that was not burned. And maybe, he believes that she kisses him not because she loves him, but because she has to do so as a mother. That was maybe what Derek thought. In some way or the other, this behavior of people like Derek, it arises from people's gross indifference to them, when they ignore them or they're indifferent towards their suffering. And also because of their hatred and dislike for handicaps and any kind of deformities, and utter lack of concern and compassion. So there's no empathy, okay? They like to shower a lot of sympathy, yes, but there's no empathy. Empathy is that they cannot understand the feelings of that person. They cannot empathize, but yes, they do sympathize. And they think that by showering words of sympathy, they are doing a great job to the impaired person. But that is absolutely incorrect. Because whatever words of sympathy they utter, they are actually their expression of fear of looking at somebody so ugly and horrible, and not out of any genuine concern and empathy. And victims of impairment do not want empty words of sympathy and pity. That's the last thing that they want. For they feel more hurt when people continue to remind them indirectly or unwittingly of them being handicapped and impaired. What do they need? Basically then, they need time and space in which they can leave behind their handicaps and live life like a normal person does. So what the best thing that the others can do for impaired people is to accept their handicaps and impairment and let them live a normal life just as the others are leading, okay? And if they are given the suitable opportunities to move forward in life, they can be highly productive and can lead a meaningful life. People must not make fun of others' handicaps and impairment, and they must never make a false display of their sympathy and concern for those who are braving any kind of impairment. Instead, they should reach out to such people and help them live a wonderful life as a normal human being by giving them that conducive environment and proper opportunities to shine like the rest of the people. And this is how Mr. Lamb himself has successfully overcome his impairment and the consequent mental block and complexes. That is what he has done for Derek too. He himself has come out of it first, and that is why he was able to reach out to Derek too and understand his feelings and what he is going through and what was the solution required to bring him into the mainstream of life. Next question. Will Derry get back to his old seclusion, or will Mr. Lamb's brief association effect a change in the kind of life he will lead in the future? Now, we have seen that Derek has stayed with Mr. Lamb only for a short period of time, for a short while. But the association has left an indelible imprint on his mind and attitude towards life. And slowly we see that, the way he speaks and the way he talks and some comments that he makes, that he has undergone a great change. From a shy, bitter and complex tone lad, he has transformed into a more mature and confident individual. And he has already started considering Mr. Lamb as his guide and his mentor and philosopher, and talks to his mother in the language of Mr. Lamb. Like when the mother, tells him that you're not supposed to go back to that old man, and this is what people say about him and talk about him and this and that. And then he Derek says, you shouldn't believe all you hear. Now, this was the advice given to him by Mr. Lamb. So now Derek is using Mr. Lamb's words to convey to his mother that you shouldn't believe all you hear. You should filter things and just keep things that concern you or that are meaningful for you, and the rest you should leave out. Then again he talks of bees singing. He also, for the first time in his life, doesn't care about how he looks, and tells his mother that Mr. Lamb talks of things that nobody has ever said. Things that even he had never thought about. And in the end of the play, he rushes to Mr. Lamb's house to fulfill his promise to the old man and to carry on his mission. And in my opinion, like, what's your opinion? The question says. So in my opinion, Derek will never go back to his old life of seclusion, okay? Because he was transformed now. He had turned over a new leaf. He had taken Mr. Lamb's message very positively, and he had understood what Mr. Lamb actually wanted to tell him, teach him. So the transformation effected by Mr. Lamb in Derek's life is there to stay with him forever, to stay there for good. And his negativity now, it is a matter of the past. It's a story of the past. Because the boy now has discovered the joy of life and learning to accept himself as he is, and by training himself to be immune to what the others say and not get affected by it, not get disturbed by it. So Mr. Lamb has, empowered him and equipped him for life. And it is very, very certain that in future he will lead a wonderful life. Next question. What is the significance of Derek's words, I thought it was empty, an empty house, in the play? Now Derek says these words to Mr. Lamb when he enters his garden very stealthily by climbing over the boundary wall. And Mr. Lamb is not surprised at all, because he's quite used to the children, coming to his garden to steal and eat apples and pears, etc. But Derek has ventured into the garden out of curiosity, and he had supposed that the garden was empty, but it was not. So when Mr. Lamb accosts him or, speaks to him, Derek is startled and he's embarrassed also, and he immediately wants to go back, but not before explaining that he had not come there to steal apples. He wanted to give that explanation to Mr. Lamb. And Mr. Lamb also then quickly, readily accepts his statement, or he tries to make him comfortable by saying, yes, I do believe you that you hadn't come here to steal. Now, Derek's words are very significant in that they point out, his terrible sense of frustration, loneliness, and isolation on account of his severely burnt face. Now, these words also prompt Mr. Lamb to spill out his loneliness as towards the end of the first scene, and as it's a play, they go a long way in Mr. Lamb and understanding of Derek's character, and Mr. Lamb's subsequent efforts in helping Derek to come out of his inferiority complex, his poor self-regard and self-rejection. Now, these words are a bitter reminder of the bitterness that has crept into Derek's mind due to other people's dislike and hatred for his ugly face. They are a desperate cry of a 14-year-old boy for love and acceptance. Why do you think Mr. Lamb keeps the gates of his house and garden open? Mr. Lamb keeps the gates of the house and garden open because it is a reflection on the whole philosophy of Mr. Lamb's life and speaks volumes about his nature. He keeps the windows and gates open to announce to the world that everybody is welcome to his house. It also suggests that whatever belongs to him belongs to everybody. It is like the kingdom of heaven that showers blessings on all. So it has his philosophy of life, and that is why he wanted to convey it to the others also. Mr. Lamb's action is also a critical comment on the people who are ever possessive about their belongings. Like they don't want to share it with others. They always talk about me, my and mine kind of a thing. So it is also a way of life where one dispels all darkness of life. This practice of Mr. Lamb also conveys the message that we should keep the gates and windows of our minds and hearts open in order to succeed in life. Okay, to have a broad horizon, to mingle with everybody, to mix up with everybody, and to show concern, to show love and equality. So all these things about his nature are reflected in this gesture of keeping the gates and windows of his house open. Okay, next question. Mr. Lamb is a man of numerous positive qualities. Mention the qualities which make him overlook the deformity or the impairment of Derek. Why do you think he changes the topic when Derek talks about his ugliness? Now, so far what had happened with Derek, that people had always stared at him, and made him conscious of the fact that he, had a burnt face. Mr. Lamb, however, when he talked to Derek and he viewed him from a totally different angle, not like the other people. His sympathetic understanding, now he's not showering sympathy, but sympathetic understanding, compassion, and a considerate attitude and positivity didn't attach any importance to his burnt face and to the outburst of Derek, when he spoke like that and he spoke how people treat him and all that. So he did not give any importance to all that, okay? Give any attention to his deformity. And why did he change the topic was because Mr. Lamb didn't want Derek to dwell unduly on the issue of his ugly looks. So he changed the topic and he started elaborating, on other things. And he also wanted to convey to Derek that in order to lead a healthy life, a happy life, one must accept one's, deformities or handicap or whatever it is, and take it in his stride. Life affords us so many bounties. There are so many bounties and blessings that God has given us, and we should consider all those bounties which are there in a multiple form, and why ponder only on one little thing and make your life miserable. Okay, so there are so many beautiful things in life that are waiting to be appreciated by us. Okay, now Mr. Lamb's special mention of healthy and ripe apples and jelly he was going to make out of them, it was an indirect reflection on the sweetness that life is full of and that is available for the asking. Only the ones who want to see it, only the ones who want to receive it will get it, And his indifference to Derek's outburst indirectly aimed at helping him to learn the positivity in life. So that is why he wanted that conversation to end there only, and he did not want to give any weightage to it. That is why he continued with the other part of the conversation. Okay. What are your personal views on the statement, blind people only ought to be with other blind people? Now, these words were uttered by a woman in a hospital where Derek was admitted. And this woman is, a kind of a stereotype for society, okay? And how people think and what they have in mind, and about dealing with handicaps and the impairment of individuals. So this kind of a statement cannot be accepted. It is highly condemned, that people should have this kind of an attitude, that all the blind people should be living together and all the lame people should be living together. This is totally ridiculous and grossly inhuman, okay? And it speaks of a perverted mind, not a healthy mind, but a perverted mind. And we can say that this woman who uttered these words was actually very insensitive to those who are facing handicaps and impairments. Now, her problem was her own repulsion and fear, on having to look at other people suffering, and seemed to believe that if people with similar handicaps were put together or they lived together, they would feel less upset about their handicaps. But that is not the solution. And what I personally feel is that I totally agree with Mr. Lamb that such a world would be weird, inhuman, and unnatural. Identically handicapped people living together will merely remind each other of their impairment, which will act as a detriment or an obstacle or a hurdle to the interest of everybody. People with handicaps and impairments can and must live among the so-called normal people, who must not consistently remind these, not so privileged people that they are handicapped, or they are missing out on something in life on account of their impairment, and that they are unfortunate or something like that. So they should be given that kind of an atmosphere where they are made to feel that they are very much normal and very much a part of society. And they should not be segregated and kept aside, but they should be allowed to mingle and grow and bloom among the so-called normal people. Handicaps, when we see any person who's impaired or deformed, so handicaps should constantly remind the normal people that accidents can occur to anybody, anyone, and, can face any kind of a problem anytime. What we need is not a world of compartmentalized segregation, but a cohesive world of mutual understanding and mutual coexistence based on love, fellow feeling, compassion, kindness, and concern. Okay? Next question. What is the significance of Derek's words regarding Mr. Lamb's falling down and breaking his neck? Now, this is an individual comment on Derek's part, who just uttered these words without knowing, that they would actually come true and sound very prophetic later on. And because Mr. Lamb dies exactly in the manner described by Derek. Now, these words are significant on two scores, okay? Firstly, it was destined that Mr. Lamb will die exactly the manner described, because remember, Mr. Lamb also believed in destiny. And because he'd already uttered those words, so it seemed that it was destined, the way Derek had said that he would die falling from the ladder, okay? So it was destined that Mr. Lamb will die exactly in the manner described by Derek during his coincidental meeting with him, and also become his last meeting. Secondly, the author wants to suggest that Mr. Lamb now is an old man and needs a successor to carry on the divine work, this beautiful work, okay? It's as good as being divine, you know, because the best way to serve God is to serve mankind. And Mr. Lamb had proved himself, you know, worthy of helping Mr. Derek, and it was actually showering, you know, a divine blessing on Derek. And similarly, now Derek was chosen as the successor, so he would also carry on with this divine work. So an angel meets a rough ashlar, chisels it into perfect smoothness, raises it up to the required moral and social standard, and departs to another world. Okay, so Mr. Lamb has actually chiseled and transformed and, you know, raised the moral standards, and moral and social standard of Derek. And after fulfilling his task on this earth, he, you know, passes away to the next world, okay, to the other world. So that is why we say that, you know, that is the significance of Derek's words, okay, because the task that Mr. Lamb had in mind or heart had been completed, and now he had chosen Derek as the successor. So he had fulfilled his task and then left for the heavenly abode. So that is all, children. These were some of the long question and answers which I'm sure will complement the lesson and the explanation done in the previous video. So all the best. God bless you all.